April 17, 1952. Red Rooster Barbershop, 138th Street and Lenox Avenue, Harlem. 3 armed men pushed through the glass door with murder on their minds. Their target sat in the 3rd chair, face covered in hot shaving cream, eyes closed. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, the most dangerous man in Harlem, was completely defenseless. The gunmen raised their weapons. The barber, a thin Italian named Sal Moretti, never stopped moving his straight razor. That's exactly why none of those gunmen ever made it back to report what happened. What happened in the next 90 seconds became the most whispered about legend in Harlem criminal history. 3 professional killers walked into that barbershop. Only one man walked out alive, and it wasn't any of the gunmen. Witnesses on Lenox Avenue heard what they thought were firecrackers. By the time NYPD arrived at 3:47 p.m., the scene looked like something out of a gangster film, except the blood was real and the bodies weren't getting back up. The 5 families held emergency meetings for 3 straight nights because of what happened in that barbershop. For 20 years after, when people talked about Bumpy Johnson's reputation, they always came back to this afternoon. That moment when death walked through the door and somehow walked right back out, empty-handed. The display of loyalty and calculated violence that day made even the Italian mob reconsider their approach to Harlem's Godfather. This is the true story of loyalty, split-second decision-making, deadly instinct, and the moment that cemented Bumpy Johnson's legend as the man you simply could not kill. Before moving forward in the story, if you want to uncover Harlem's untold criminal secrets and see the legends who ruled the streets without permission, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell right now. Open book, these are the stories that history books hide and that classrooms never dare to teach. But to understand what happened that afternoon, we need to go back 3 weeks. March 26, 1952. Bumpy Johnson controlled the numbers racket across 15 square blocks of Harlem. We're talking about $1 million a year operation. Policy banks, protection money, loan sharking, and complete territorial control from 125th Street to 145th Street. At 45 years old, Bumpy had just finished an 11-year stretch at Alcatraz. He came home leaner, sharper, and more ruthless than when he left. But the underworld never stops moving. While Bumpy was locked up, the Genovese crime family had been testing Harlem's borders. They wanted a bigger piece of the numbers game. They wanted tribute. They wanted Bumpy to bend the knee. Anthony Big Tony Salerno ran the Genovese operations in East Harlem. Big Tony had 3 soldiers under him who specialized in persuasion, the kind that left bodies in the East River. These men weren't street thugs. They were professional killers with 20 hits between them. Vincent Vinny Shots Morrow, Carlo Benedetti, Frank the Wrench Lombardo, each had done time. Each was a made man. Each had killed for the family before breakfast. Big Tony's message to Bumpy was simple. Pay tribute on every dollar you make in the numbers game, or we take the territory by force. 40% off the top. Bumpy's response. He sent Big Tony's messenger back with 3 broken fingers and a verbal message I can't repeat on this platform. It was the ultimate disrespect. A declaration of war. For 3 weeks, tension crackled through Harlem like electricity before a thunderstorm. Bumpy knew a response was coming. What he didn't know was when, where, or how. So he did what he always did. He kept his routine but changed the details. Different restaurants each night. Different routes home. Different associates at different times. Unpredictable except in one place. Every Thursday at 3 p.m., Bumpy Johnson got a shave at the Red Rooster Barbershop. Sal Moretti had been shaving Bumpy for 12 years, even wrote to him in Alcatraz. The man was loyal, More than that, Sal was a master craftsman who took pride in his work. Hot towel, fresh blade, perfect angle. Bumpy trusted exactly 4 people in this world. Sal was one of them. Big Tony's intelligence network found the pattern. Thursday afternoons, Red Rooster, 3 o'clock. The perfect moment to send a message that would echo through every criminal organization in New York. Nobody disrespects the Genovese family and lives to tell about it. April 17th started like any other Thursday for Bumpy Johnson. He collected from 3 policy banks before noon, met with his numbers runners at a soul food spot on 131st Street, discussed territory disputes with his lieutenants over coffee and cigarettes. Everything routine, everything calm. At 2:45 p.m., Bumpy's Cadillac pulled up outside the Red Rooster. His driver, a man named Jerome "Jitty" Williams, offered to come inside. Bumpy waved him off. "It's a barbershop, not a war zone," he said. Those would be the words Jitty remembered for the rest of his life. Bumpy walked in, nodded to Sal, took off his hat and coat, settled into the third chair, his chair. Sal draped the cape around his shoulders, started heating the shaving cream. 2 other customers sat in chairs 1 and 2, getting haircuts from Sal's assistants. Regular working men, a postal worker and a construction foreman. Wrong place, wrong time. Meanwhile, 6 blocks north, Vincent Morrow, Carlo Benedetti, and Frank Lombardo were doing final checks on their weapons. 3 .38 revolvers, fully loaded. They'd received their orders that morning from Big Tony himself. Make it loud, make it public, make it permanent. The plan was simple and brutal. Walk in, shoot Bumpy where he sat, walk out. The barbershop was a civilian location, which meant Bumpy wouldn't be heavily armed. The shaving chair left him exposed and vulnerable. It was the perfect kill. What the 3 gunmen didn't know, what Big Tony's intelligence failed to discover, was Sal Moretti's full background. Now here's where it gets complicated. Sal wasn't just a barber. Before he came to Harlem in 1938, Sal had been a combat medic in the Italian army during the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. He'd seen violence that would break most men. After immigrating to America, he'd worked as a driver for the Luciano family for 2 years before walking away from that life to pursue his craft. Sal knew how men moved when they came to kill. He could read intent the way most people read newspapers. At 3:04 p.m., Sal was lathering Bumpy's face when he saw them through the barbershop window. 3 men, moving with purpose, hands inside their coats, eyes locked on the interior of the shop. Sal's hands never stopped moving, but his entire body went into a different state of awareness. Bumpy's eyes were closed under the hot towel, relaxed, vulnerable, trusting. The bell above the door chimed. Vincent Morrow entered first, Carlo Benedetti second, Frank Lombardo third. They spread out immediately, professional pattern. Morrow to the left, Benedetti center, Lombardo to the right, cutting off angles, controlling the room. Sal saw their positioning and understood everything. These weren't amateurs, these weren't robbers, these were hitters. The 2 customers in chairs 1 and 2 looked up confused. Sal's assistants froze mid-cut. Bumpy remained still under the hot towel, unaware. The gunmen reached into their coats. Sal made a decision in a fraction of a second. He pressed the straight razor against Bumpy's throat, not enough to cut, just enough to be felt through the towel, and whispered 2 words in Italian that Bumpy understood from his years in the streets. "Stay down." Then Sal moved. But here's what nobody knew until years later when the story finally came out through underworld channels. Sal Moretti wasn't just a barber who happened to be skilled with a blade. During his time with the Luciano family, Sal had been trained in close-quarters combat by an enforcer named Albert Tick-Tock Tannenbaum, one of the most efficient killers in Murder, Inc. history. Sal had walked away from that life, but the training never left his muscle memory. The moment Morrow's gun cleared his coat, Sal was already in motion. The straight razor in his hand was freshly stropped. Carbon steel, surgically sharp. Sal covered the 8 feet between Bumpy's chair and Morrow's position in under 2 seconds. Morrow was turning toward Bumpy, finger on the trigger, when Sal's blade opened his throat from ear to collarbone. One motion, precise, surgical. Morrow dropped without firing a shot. Benedetti and Lombardo both drew their weapons, but now they had a problem. Sal was between them and their target. Firing meant hitting each other or hitting civilians. The close quarters that were supposed to trap Bumpy now trapped them. And this is where it gets crazy. Bumpy Johnson, face still covered in shaving cream, hot towel half off, threw himself backward out of the barber chair. The cape tangled around his shoulders. He hit the floor rolling and came up behind the counter where Sal kept his supplies. Bumpy's own .45 was in his coat across the room, completely out of reach. But under Sal's counter, there was a sawed-off shotgun that nobody except Bumpy and Sal knew existed. Sal had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. Benedetti fired twice at Sal. One bullet shattered the mirror. The second caught Sal in the left shoulder, spinning him into the wall. But Sal kept moving. He'd been shot before in Ethiopia. Pain was just information. He launched himself at Benedetti, that straight razor still in his right hand. Lombardo turned his .38 toward Bumpy's position behind the counter. That was his fatal mistake. Bumpy rose up with the shotgun and fired once. The blast caught Lombardo's center mass at 12 feet. He went down like a puppet with cut strings. Benedetti tried to bring his gun around toward Bumpy, but Sal was on him. The straight razor found Benedetti's wrist, then his neck. 2 cuts, both precise, both fatal. Benedetti fired one more shot as he fell, wild, panicked, that punch through the ceiling. Then silence. The entire confrontation lasted maybe 15 seconds. 3 professional killers neutralized. 1 wounded barber. 1 shaving cream-covered crime boss holding a smoking shotgun. The postal worker and construction foreman sat frozen in their chairs, covered in plaster dust from the ceiling shot, too terrified to move. Sal's assistants had hit the floor at the first sign of violence. Smart. Bumpy locked eyes with Sal across the room, both men breathing hard, blood pooling on the black and white checkered floor, the smell of gunpowder and copper thick in the air. Bumpy spoke first. "You cut my face." Sal checked his shoulder wound, winced, then looked at Bumpy. Not even a nick. Outside on Lenox Avenue, people were scattering. Jitty burst through the door with his own weapon drawn, saw the scene, and immediately understood what had happened. He looked at Bumpy, then at Sal, then at the 3 bodies. "We need to move," Jitty said. "Cops will be here in 3 minutes." But Bumpy didn't move. He walked over to Sal, still holding the shotgun, shaving cream still covering half his face. He looked at his barber, his friend, bleeding from a bullet wound, straight razor still gripped in his hand. "You saved my life," Bumpy said. Sal nodded once. "You gave me a life worth saving 12 years ago when you brought your business to my shop. We're even." They weren't even, not by a long shot, but that was the code. You didn't make a big show of loyalty. You just lived it. Now let me take you back to what those 90 seconds really looked like in slow motion. The bell chimes. 3 men enter. Sal's hands keep moving, but his mind accelerates. He sees the pattern, the positioning, the intent. Years of survival instinct fire all at once. He knows death just walked through his door wearing 3 faces. The hot towel comes off Bumpy's face. The razor touches his throat. 2 Italian words. "Stay down." Sal doesn't think. Thinking gets you killed. He acts. 8 feet, 2 seconds. The first gunman, Morrow, turns. The barrel comes up. Sal's blade is already moving. 1 cut, throat to collarbone. The human body holds roughly 5 liters of blood. A severed carotid artery can empty that in under 2 minutes. Morrow has maybe 30 seconds of consciousness left. He uses them trying to raise his gun. He fails. The second and third gunmen, Benedetti and Lombardo, are now firing. Mirrors explode. Bottles shatter. The bullet hits Sal's shoulder. He feels the impact. Bone or muscle, can't tell, doesn't matter, he's still functional. He keeps moving. Momentum is survival. Bumpy hits the floor. His mind races through options. No weapon, no cover. No chance unless Sal kept that shotgun where they agreed 12 years ago. Bumpy's fingers find the weapon. Cold steel, loaded, ready. Lombardo turns toward the counter. He's a professional. He knows to eliminate the biggest threat. That's Bumpy. But professionalism also means following patterns, and patterns make you predictable. Lombardo pivots exactly the way he's been trained. It's textbook, it's perfect form, it's also why he dies. Bumpy rises with the shotgun, fires. The blast is deafening in the enclosed space. Lombardo's body lifts off the ground from the impact and crumples. Benedetti is now in a panic. 2 of his crew are down. His target is armed. His only advantage, numbers, is gone. He tries to swing his .38 toward Bumpy, but Sal is already on him. The straight razor finds flesh twice. Wrist first. Neck second. Benedetti's brain sends signals to pull the trigger. His severed tendons don't respond. The gun fires anyway as he falls. Reflex, not aim. The bullet hits nothing important except the ceiling. Then the silence. That terrible, ringing silence after violence ends. 3 bodies on the floor, blood spreading across white tiles. The smell of cordite and death. Sal standing against the wall, shoulder bleeding, straight razor still ready. Bumpy behind the counter, shotgun pointed at the door, shaving cream dripping onto his shirt. The 2 civilians in the chairs haven't moved. Their eyes are wide. They're in shock. They've just watched something they'll never be able to unsee. And that bell above the door, still swinging gently, chiming softly, like nothing happened at all. The NYPD arrived at 3:47 p.m. 17 officers, 2 detectives. The scene was exactly as you'd imagine. 3 dead mobsters, 1 wounded barber, 1 crime boss covered in shaving cream, 2 traumatized civilians, and a story that nobody could quite believe. Bumpy's lawyer arrived within the hour. The 2 civilians, the postal worker and construction foreman, gave statements that matched perfectly. 3 armed men entered the barbershop, brandished weapons. The barber acted in defense of his client and himself. Bumpy Johnson defended himself with a weapon belonging to the establishment. Self-defense, clear-cut, open and shut. The Genovese family sent word through intermediaries within 24 hours. They wanted peace. Big Tony Salerno personally called off any further action against Bumpy Johnson. The message was clear. If 3 professional hitters couldn't take out Bumpy when he was defenseless in a barber chair, then maybe Bumpy Johnson wasn't meant to be taken out. The tribute demand was dropped. Harlem remained Bumpy's territory. The 5 families agreed to a new understanding. Bumpy controlled his blocks. They controlled theirs. Mutual respect. No more testing the boundaries. Sal Moretti recovered from his shoulder wound in 6 weeks. Bumpy paid for the best doctors in New York, covered every expense. More than that, Bumpy made sure every criminal organization in Harlem knew what Sal had done. That barbershop became untouchable. Nobody collected protection money from Sal. Nobody bothered his customers. Nobody even looked at that shop wrong. For the next 16 years, until Bumpy's death in 1968, Sal cut his hair every Thursday at 3 p.m. Same chair, same routine. The bullet hole in the mirror was never fixed. Sal kept it there as a reminder. In 1957, a reporter from the Amsterdam News asked Bumpy about the barbershop incident. Bumpy's response became legendary. "Some men talk about loyalty. Sal Moretti lives it. There's a difference." The story of that afternoon, April 17, 1952, became required knowledge in Harlem's underworld. It proved two things. First, that Bumpy Johnson was protected by something more powerful than guns or money. He was protected by genuine loyalty. Second, that the quietest man in the room might be the most dangerous. Sal Moretti never spoke publicly about what happened, never gave interviews, never wrote his story. He just kept cutting hair, perfecting his craft, living his quiet life. When Sal died in 1979 at the age of 74, over 500 people attended his funeral. Bumpy had been dead for 11 years by then, but Bumpy's widow, Mame, sat in the front row. She knew what Sal had done. She knew what he'd meant to her husband. The Red Rooster Barbershop closed in 1982. The building is a cell phone store now, but old-timers in Harlem still tell the story. 3 gunmen walked in. Only the barber walked out alive. Well, the barber and the Godfather of Harlem, that's the code. That's loyalty. That's the legend. This story teaches us something fundamental about power and survival. The most valuable currency in the underworld was never money or territory. It was trust. Bumpy Johnson survived because he'd spent 12 years earning Sal Moretti's loyalty. That investment paid back in blood and steel when it mattered most. If you want more untold stories from Harlem's golden age of organized crime, subscribe and hit that notification bell. These are the real stories, the ones that shaped New York's underworld. Drop a comment. Would you have stayed loyal like Sal Moretti, or would you have hit the floor and stayed there? Who should I cover next? Stephanie sent. Claire, the Queen of Harlem's numbers game, or Frank Lucas and his notorious blue magic heroin empire. This is the real story, not Hollywood, the legend.